Hey everyone, welcome to the Transplant Strong Podcast. I'm back with Lisa again. Hi Lisa, how are you?
Hi Danny, I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Very, very good. You're working away in Airbnb again.
Yeah, another Airbnb.
Yeah, so nice. Today we're going to have a little chat about sort of depression, sort of before and after the transplant and how it affected us personally. And, hopefully anyone listening that is going through that, they might be able to relate and, learn a thing or two.
Definitely. I think everyone we speak to experiences different emotions at different points during this whole thing. And I don't like to just say journey or chapter because I think it's ongoing, isn't it? From the
Yeah.
moment that you're told you're going to have a transplant to having it and then forevermore thereafter. And it can hit you all at once when you're least expecting it. So I think it's a great topic to talk about, and it's Mental Health Awareness Month, I think, so that fits in well.
Yeah, it's well timed. We didn't really plan it around that, but it has worked out well.
It's worked out well.
Yeah. So, I know we've sort of had a small chat, and you say that I think we've had very different experiences around our mental health and our transplants.
Yes.
So for me, I found it kind of really hit me a year after my transplant. The mental side, I found my recovery was in like two parts. So I had the physical part in the first year where my focus was just on getting fit and recovering. And then it was like a year down the line and I was back to fitness, and then it was all the thoughts of the donor and the donor's family, and why I got the transplant, and just all these different thoughts that sort of hit me. And for me, it was like a time where I felt like I needed some help and guidance.
Yeah, it's was there a trigger? Was it like the first year anniversary or something like
There
that
wasn't
triggered that,
there
or?
wasn't necessarily a trigger. And with my counselling, I didn't just talk about my transplant. There'd been a lot go on leading
Other
up to
stuff?
that. So, and I'm sure a lot of people can kind of relate to this. Before my transplant, I was in a strong relationship. I had a couple of jobs. Life was going good. And then within a very short period of time, I was registered as homeless, not have any jobs, put on the transplant list.
Massive.
Yeah. So it was like my whole life just flipped upside down. I was staying at my best friend's parents' house. I had to ring them up and be like, "Do you think your mum and dad will mind if I stay at your house or their house?"
Yeah.
And they just got rid of all their kids, and then I moved in.
And then
So
hot rocks Danny. I think you
yeah,
could be the most positive person in the world, but to go through all of that in such a short period of time, it's going to affect you and it's going to catch up with you at some point, isn't it? So
yeah.
I guess, like you said, there wasn't necessarily a trigger, but your focus was on that physical recovery for so long. When you started to relax out of that because you're getting your strength back, that's
Yeah.
probably when it all started to come through.
Yeah, definitely. I felt like life was okay. It was all on pause because of my transplant. That was all that life was focused around. You can't go anywhere anyway. You just
Yeah.
sat around waiting for it. So like you say, you said it right. Like once life sort of started to fall back into place, I realized how disruptive my life was, if that makes sense.
It's crazy, and
Yeah,
it becomes a new normal to us. And I think for anyone who goes through anything traumatic, if it's a long process and a long-term thing, whatever that may be, for us transplant, I think it almost starts to feel normal, doesn't it? And then
yeah,
when you start to get back to your old kind of normal, it can almost be like, wow, did all of that actually just happen? And you
yeah,
hear other people's stories and you just think, wow, you're so inspiring, you're amazing. And then you think, oh yeah, I've done that as well. That's happened to me too. And it can take you by shock. I think in just the most unexpected moments, for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, and I know we said it a little bit before. Like I was going to sign up for counselling before my transplant because in my head I was like, I kind of need it. But for us in the UK, you can get it for free, which is great. But there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through, and it
Yeah.
takes quite a while to get it organised. And I didn't follow it up, and I didn't go through it. So I was like, I'll be fine, I'll be fine. And then when it did come, and I did organise counselling a year down the line. I didn't have to have tons of sessions. I was a few months and I was
Good.
okay. But for me, it was kind of like speaking to someone and have someone validate all my feelings and just say that everything you're feeling right now is valid and you should be feeling this, you know, all these
Yeah.
thoughts that are going through your head is normal, and it's not.
Yeah, it's not a
abnormal.
bad thing. It's
Yeah, yeah.
like again falls back to stigma and stuff like that. You know, there's no stigma about suddenly having these thoughts and thinking, you know, like feeling depressed and having these emotions. There's nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely fine, and you're right to have reached out to speak to somebody. Do you think it's like I'm podcasting you now, but do you think if you if you went ahead with the counselling before the transplant, even though you didn't know that's how you were going to feel, it would have helped?
I think it possibly would have helped me sort out all the issues that else were going on in my life, for sure, and then it would have been less of a build up afterwards. Yeah. But I think in terms of actually speaking to someone about a transplant, although the guy was really good at helping me with a lot of aspects of my life, he was just kind of shocked about everything, and he didn't really have much to say about a transplant.
Like just to see someone's reaction to that and all of that, it must have been like that kind of that point of like, look at this man's face, look at this guy's shock in what I've just experienced. Something that you'd normalized, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And this is where I think when it comes to counselling, like I don't know if Elijah still does it at all, but she's on Instagram, Eliza Chats podcast.
Yeah.
But I think this is where having someone that's been through a transplant and does counselling can really, really be beneficial. Because like I say, he was great for helping me kind of just put all my life into perspective and just little bits. But in terms of just if you were going to focus on your transplant, then I think speaking to someone that's been through it is a lot more beneficial.
I totally agree. And I kind of went the other way to you. So I was offered a session before when I was listed. And so I booked it and I went to it, and we both concluded at the end of that session that at that point I was okay. I was handling everything, and that I could go back if I needed it. And I think the turning point for me and how I managed to so far, not saying that's not going to change, but how I've managed my emotions, and they've been up and they've been down, they've been round and everywhere, is by doing what like you and I do on social media, because that automatically creates those conversations with people in a similar position. So I think that's kind of been my counselling. That's I started popping everything onto my Instagram, everything medical onto my Instagram, and I've continued with it because I can see it helps others, but it does also help me. It helps me to speak about it, you know, and vent if I need to vent, and feel sad about something if I need to feel sad about something. I think a lot of people have these kind of realizations, and there's like what's is it survivor's guilt. I had that massively. I had it in two ways. I felt so awful for people that I knew had been waiting longer than me. I almost felt like they should have gone before me, but it's obviously that's not what it's about, and it's all down to the match. So that's unhelped. But I felt so awful, and I had you know, some really close friends like Shona. I messaged her before I popped it onto social media that I was going in and had my call, because I didn't want her to be blindsided by seeing that I'd got a call quite quickly. So I had that guilt, and then I had the guilt of someone's actually passed away. But I do think in those situations we've got to remind ourselves that they haven't passed away for us. It's a circumstance, and thankfully they agreed to organ donation, and that's what's enabled us to, you know, have another chapter which they haven't been able to have. So for me, I think, and whenever people speak to me, say, how have you handled it? How do you deal with it? My first piece of advice is, if you're open to it, look into social media and start sharing your experience and speaking with other people.
I've definitely found with social media that you think, oh, I don't know whether I really want to post this. It's very like open, and maybe no one's going to relate. But the more open it is, and the more honest it is, you seem to get a bigger reaction.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can put something which can be really quite personal or embarrassing, or, you know, any of those things. And I think just by being totally transparent and totally open, someone somewhere is reading it and going, oh, it's not just me. Like,
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
had that symptom. I've experienced that. Or they see it, and then a month down the line, they go, oh, this is what Danny or Lisa were talking
yeah,
about. I'm not alone in this. And I think it also affects people. So if they are having particular symptoms, if we share stuff and experiences that we've been through, when they speak to their teams and they mention other people, because our teams are wonderful and they are the experts, and they're, you know, they are the ones that know everything medically and clinically, but they haven't been through it themselves.
yeah,
So it's quite hard when you're sat in a, you know, in a clinics room and they're not really understanding of exactly what you're trying to say or how bad a particular symptom is. So sometimes you do need to vent after a hospital appointment and just say, you know, I don't know if I was heard, I don't think I was heard, but yeah, there's people in the community that are absolutely hearing you.
yeah. Yeah, I think, like you say as well, I think that's kind of why I started doing these podcasts a little bit, was kind of beneficial for me as well as anyone else, was like, I want to talk to other people and I want to hear their experiences and feed off of those and be like, oh yeah, I can relate to that. Or, you know, if I say something and they say, oh, I can relate to that, it's like, oh, this is great.
Yeah, this is like our own little counselling session, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like we don't earn anything by posting what we post on social media, but it is as much for ourselves and our own mental well-being as it is, and the reason why we do it to help others. So it's big, I think, going out there and finding that community. And you also know that there's lots of people out there who are following pages like ours, and they're getting lots out of it, and they don't post a thing themselves, and that's okay, just to be a silent watcher. Because you just don't know what anyone's going through. A lot of people always struggle with the but you look so well comment, and you know, because if you looked at either of us, you wouldn't think we've been through what we've been through necessarily. And a lot of people struggle with that, but I think always try to flip things, and I would say you look so well as a massive compliment. Like, I've just been through this huge massive thing, I'm still going through lots of huge massive things, and someone tells me I look well, I'm absolutely taking it. So I think there's a bit of self, you know, trying to work on how you receive messages from other people and taking the positive out of things. But I also understand that I'm over positive sometimes, and that can be really annoying. So it could be easy for me to say.
You're a huge inspiration to me, because we've had a very different life, I think, or we've had a very different experience, both of us, since our transplants. I mean, touch wood for me, I haven't really been back in hospital. Everything's fine. My bloods are stable. Whereas yours has been very up, very down. You've had some stage, you've had some rejection. And yet, you know, you do always seem to have a very positive spin on things, even if it isn't going well, and you're open about it not going well, but and you're open about your feelings, but like I say, you seem to have a very positive spin on things, and you're just very positive, and to me it's very inspirational, because if in the future, if I do find myself going through these times, which is likely, I can draw strength from the fact that, like, you know, I saw Lisa go through it. She was doing amazing. She did amazing afterwards. And it's a time that will pass, you know. It's a tough time, but it's a time that will pass. So
exactly. It's really kind of you to say. And likewise, I'm fully inspired by you too, because it's great for me going through complications to see people like you who aren't going through complications at this present moment in time and think, you know, everything will be okay. And the fact that you keep sharing, even though your life has gone, you know, to an extent back to a nice level of normality, and you're thriving in other areas, with the waffle van, of course. It's, you know, that to me is what I go like, this is that's what I'm hoping to get to. So I think even when you have a complication, I have bad days too. I have moments in time where I think, you know, another blood test, wait for another bad news phone call, you know, it gets a lot, it becomes a lot. But I also think if I didn't have a transplant, I wouldn't be going through this. So I've got to be grateful for that, right? And I've got to just take it as a learning curve and keep advocating for myself and educating myself. And and just proving to myself that I've still got that strength and gumption. And so everybody who, whichever type of experience they have, are so amazingly strong. They may just not know it. So to have these kind of podcasts that you do with all the people that you do them with, which are brilliant, by the way, are really great tools for people to go and listen to and just draw on and just take a moment to, you know, to reflect and just see how far they've come, and that they've got people around them to help them the rest of the way.
Yeah, I think you're right as well, and like taking the time to reflect at how far you've come, because the whole transplant process is messy on the head, and then afterwards we have this kind of like race to recovery and to get back to normal life, and we do get lost in it, and then we get back to normal life and we're working and this, and you sort of, it's good to sit back and think, Jesus, I've overcome all this, and I am you know, because even now, like with my business, with everything, you have days where you're like, you just don't feel worthy, you don't feel good enough, and like you say, when you sit back and you actually reflect on everything that's happened, and you're like, because age as well, like for me, I don't know, 39, I think, or 38, 39, something like that. But getting up to 40, you know, and a lot of people around me are settled, they've got houses, a career, everything like that. And like I said, my life just flipped completely upside down and having the transplant. So you compare yourself, and then you're like, I'm not where they are, I'm not where they are. But then you look at what you've been through, and you're like, oh, actually, you know, I've been through a lot. And the fact that I'm still here and just doing this is amazing.
Absolutely. And like what you mentioned there was all material. And I did a post about it actually not long after transplant, because when I was stood at those doors with my husband Justin, he said to say hi, by the way, and we were waiting to go into transplant, I didn't think about home. I didn't think about, you know, the material stuff. I didn't think about what car was parked on the drive or what clothes I was going to be wearing home after my recovery. I was thinking about my husband and my mum and my dad and my sisters and my dogs. You know, like those things were important. And as unlucky some people may say that we have been with our health, we've been so lucky to have that awakening and go, there's different things that are important in life. And you know, I don't strive for that title or that particular wage packet or whatever it may be, you know. So unlucky to an extent, but extremely lucky to realize that life can go just like that. And you know, you've got to hold on to what's more important.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, like you said, the material things all evaporate when you're going through something as crazy as,
not a bother.
Well,
didn't care.
Yeah,
and it does. And I didn't give a hoot what I looked like when I came out of ICU. You know, it's funny how suddenly things that you strive for your whole life are just, they're non-existent at that moment in time.
Yeah, like I say, I mean, at the time when I was waiting for my transplant, I was just living at my best friend's mum and dad's house, and when I look back, it was the best thing ever, because his mum is like just amazing. Like, I got 3 meals a day, all cooked for me, home cooked food, fresh food. But at that time, even though I had nothing, I didn't really. The fact they live out in the countryside as well, so it was like the fact that I could just go out for a walk and all of that stuff was so irrelevant, that I didn't have a big TV to watch. I didn't have my own room, or I didn't have anything. I was literally just so focused on the transplant and everything.
And getting through that.
Yeah,
definitely. I think also it's really important to mention that these high emotions and feelings of, you know, being depressed and things can also be medication related. Like when we start to taper down off steroids, you've been on such a high, like taking the high levels of steroids are like 12 cans of Red Bull in 1 hour. And then as they taper down post transplant, some people come off them, some people go back onto them, some people stay on a maintenance dose, you know, some people have their doses go up again. That can really mess with your emotions as well. So it's definitely a big one to remember. And if you do start to feel low and down and start to feel really sad about things, yet reach out to your friends, your family, your support network, and people you know have been in a similar position. But also look at your medication and see if there's been some changes recently, and absolutely speak to your team about that. If there is something, there is a pattern that you can see, because they can help with all of that stuff. And you know, if it is medication related, it can be tweaked, and it can just, you know, pull you back out of that really low feeling.
Yeah, Pred's a mad one. I can't remember. The nurse had a really funny saying for it, like Pred something, and it was basically just like your emotions are so up and down when you're on it. And
Crazy.
there was a time when they came round after my transplant, and I hadn't really cried at all, sort of at hospital or anything, and I was pretty sort of stable. And then I was taking them, and a couple of days after, she came round and she was telling me the foods I couldn't eat, and one of them was just like cheese or something, certain cheeses, and I just cried. I just cried and cried and cried. She was like, "That'll probably be the meds." Yeah. Just couldn't hold it in anymore. It was literally the thing that pushed me over the edge, you know. And,
yeah, just being told you can't have any more cheddar sandwiches. That's it. Yeah,
they are known for really disrupting your sleep and your mental health and everything.
Yeah, and pain relief can do that, and other medications
Morphine,
we go on, and even the immunosuppression stuff can have great effects. And if you do reach out to friends in a similar position, they have different symptoms to you. So just because they may say that they haven't experienced that doesn't mean that you're not experiencing that because of that reason. So definitely speak to clinicians whenever you're feeling that way. They can help. They absolutely can help. And also they can arrange these counselling sessions and things like that for you as well.
Yeah, like I say, I would definitely recommend counselling to anyone that's going through any kind of hard time, really, because if you haven't got someone to share, you don't feel comfortable sharing, but don't feel necessarily comfortable sharing. Because for me, I find it easier to talk to someone who has no influence in my life or has no. I just feel it's like, this. I don't know. I just don't feel like I'm being a burden, if that makes sense, because I'm not putting my problems onto someone. Especially when you know someone, you know they're going through a hard time, you know they've got problems. So I don't want. As a counsellor, I don't know anything about his life. All I know is he's there and he's turning up and he's smiley. So for me, he's living the best life ever, and it's okay to project on him, and he can take it. Do you know what I mean?
Paid.
Yeah, and he's getting paid. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that. I completely hear that, and I think there is two sides to that, isn't there? Like being able to be with someone in that profession and have that hour, half an hour, once a month, whatever it is that gets set up for you, is so super important. And I think when you get into those conversations, a bit like these conversations, you end up going down tangents you didn't realize you were going to go down, and you can uncover things that you didn't realize were an issue or a problem or sitting subconsciously, in the back of your mind somewhere. So having that conversation, but also having the conversation with people who've been in a similar position, again, you can kind of say something and both of you have light bulb moments and go, yeah, I experienced that as well. And it's hard. There's also times like when people start to decide whether they're going to write their donor letter or not, and people can agonize over this. I certainly did. Same. And then they agonize over whether they're going to get a reply, because that's not a guarantee. And
I'm still waiting. I wrote 2 or 3 years ago, and I kind of gave up hope. But then I saw someone on a Facebook group 5 years later, they received a letter from the donor's dad. So
there's always a bit of hope there, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think it took me 2 or 3 years to write the letter after my transplant. So I did say to myself, if it took me that long to write it, it might take them a long time to sit down and process and write what think what they want to write back. So
definitely,
I didn't expect anything back straight away. And
that's so true. And also if you do receive a reply, you take that moment to sit in a quiet room and process it and take that time, because it's huge. Like, I didn't know I have received a reply, and I do have communication now with my donor's mum, and that's amazing, and I'm extremely lucky to have that communication. But it did take me a while to process it all, because I didn't know there was an expectation on me. And I say to my donor's mum often, am I saying the right things? And do I need to say I'm sorry every time we message, or do I need to mention Georgie every time we message, my donor. And so between the two of us, we're learning how to navigate that. So that's a whole nother, time where emotions can be at their highest, at their lowest, or unsure. And I think it's really important for anyone who's going through it to know that, like the whole journey is, it is a roller coaster, and that's the same on your emotions as well. And as we both said earlier, it's okay to be down and it's okay to be up, and you should never compare yourself to somebody else's experience, but learn from their experience and take that support from each other. I think that's key. And just go with it and speak to who you need to speak to, and take the time and be kind and gentle to yourself.
Yeah, I think if you went through a transplant and you didn't experience any lows, then you're probably a bit unhinged.
I think so. Definitely. I mean, you have to be, surely. It is huge, and I think there's so many different ways that emotion can go as well.
That's the thing with the whole mental health on the whole broad spectrum, is I think people just feel like that they're alone, they're the only ones that are feeling it. And there's so many things, and now say just talking to someone is what helps, and it definitely does.
Yeah, and it does help, especially speaking to people who have different experiences as well, because like I'm in I have a small group of people that I speak to probably every day, and some of them are going through a time where everything's going really smooth, and some are going through a time where things are really, really difficult. And I know if I were to compare against my hard to their hard, it would look totally different. And if I were to think, oh, it's going really well for them, why isn't it going really well for me? I just can't think like that. I want it to go well for everybody, and my time will come when it goes well for me. And I have good days. Today was a good day. I think it's just taking it as it comes, taking it step by step, day by day, and knowing you can, being prepared to have a good run, and then there could be a hurdle or a bit of a bump in the road. But if you're prepared for those hurdles and bumps in the road, whether you're a month post or 10 years post, then when they come, they're not as much as a shock, because everyone who finds their new normal, we all know there could always be something. And I think to have that there and just know that anything can crop up, but we have the really good supportive teams around us that will guide us through any of those issues. And I think you can kind of relax a little bit in that knowledge of I'm doing the best I can when I can, and that's good.
Yeah, and that's it. Doing the best you can is. I saw something that was like, if all you can give is 20% that day, and you give 20%, then really you've given 100%.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It's so true. It's so true. And because I also think people who haven't gone through such a huge trauma event or that kind of recovery, or on the high levels of immunosuppression that we sit on, they don't understand how one day can be so great and the next day can be so awful. It literally can flip on its head so super quickly. It's things in the transplant world can change very quickly, but they can also take a very long time. Like, people say to me, like, but you've been in rejection for a long time, and I'm like, yeah, and it's long time management. It's not like an overnight thing, but I think it's also the stigma around those words like rejection, infection. People think if they reject an organ, it's overnight. That's it. They think if they get an infection, that's it. And our infections to you and I are going to be, a lot more severe than they would be to a person who isn't immunosuppressed, and we're likely to be hospitalized and have needs for other things. But again, it's that preparation of not expecting these things to happen, but understanding they can happen. And then I think, it's easier to deal with as and when they do crop up.
Yeah, that's totally right. Definitely.
Yeah, you see a lot of people who come out of transplant and in the first month have like absolutely nothing go wrong, and it's like, yeah, this is brilliant, I feel amazing, and then suddenly they hit a wall and a hurdle and they go, it was going so well, and that can really like almost like dull their shine, and it's
Yeah,
nothing to be ashamed of if something doesn't go well. It's just another hurdle to overcome.
yeah, that's it. Don't necessarily take it personally.
No,
It is,
no.
it's part and parcel of transplant life,
Part and
unfortunately.
parcel. These things are things that can't be helped, and it's not about doing anything wrong. It's not
Yeah,
about not listening to your team or anything like that. It's just the way it falls, and I think just I think it always falls back to that support network and taking up any counselling that's offered, just to help you get through those times when you're at your best and at your worst.
yeah. Yeah, so to kind of sum it up, really, is it's either your support network sort of includes counselling or just really close friends. You know, just it's basically just having people that you can share all your experiences with, bounce things back off of, and like I say, for me, it was just having someone to say that the feelings that you're having are valid. You know, it's totally acceptable to be shocked and overwhelmed and confused and all of this is totally fine. I mean, there was even sort of points of paranoia in my life because I was so anxious and everything. And I'd never really felt like that. So yeah, it was mad. And then when I finally kind of relaxed and everything and I processed it, it was all right.
Yeah, it is that, isn't it? You do go through those times of anxiousness and thinking, is this actually happening, and what's going to happen? And I think you also always, like, we all do it and we all look for what the outcome's going to be, but you can never predict that. You can never predict when, what, where, and how. And I think it's easy for us to say because we're post, and
Yeah,
those people that are waiting, that's probably the most anxious time because you don't know what's coming. As much as you
yeah,
can educate yourself and you can speak to other people, you don't know what's coming and you don't know when it's going to come. So I think for anyone that's waiting, just take light and all the people who are sharing their experiences post, knowing that they were in that position at one point. And yeah, we're all here for each other, which is wonderful.
yeah. We definitely are. I mean, my inbox is always open.
Yeah,
Not
so
sometimes the fastest person to reply, but I definitely will reply. Uh, if I can't help you, generally, I've spoken to so many people now, I could probably point you in the direction of people that have had similar transplants, similar experiences, and everything like that.
yeah, exactly. There's always someone, isn't there? You
Yeah.
mention something and it'll be like, well, I haven't got a clue what that is, but I do know someone that does.
Yeah, yeah.
And even the people who are a little bit less active on the social media, they're always willing to talk to other people in a different format. So
Yeah.
yeah, between us and the community that's out there, there's always someone that has experienced something similar. So yeah, everyone should always reach out and ask the questions. Nothing silly, nothing stupid, nothing's too embarrassing.
No way.
It's all part and parcel, and we're all here for it.
Yeah, I mean, just one last story. When I come out of hospital, I was sitting in the garden a few weeks post. I got stung by a bee, so I rang up the hospital and I was like, "I've been stung by a bee. Do I have to worry?" And the lady was laughing. She was like, "No, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. The bee's not going to kill you."
Yeah, it is always that one, and I think everyone's been through this. I can't remember if I took my tablet or if I've taken two of my
Yeah,
tablets, and
yeah,
what am I going to die tomorrow
yeah,
because I've missed that one tablet?
yeah,
It's I think everyone's been through that as well, but it's those learning experiences. You now know that you haven't, that bee sting wasn't a massive issue
yeah,
for you, and you found the right people at that point in time,
yeah,
and they helped you through that.
yeah,
And I phoned the right people at the time very early on when I missed a dose of something, or potentially doubled up on a dose of something, and they were there and they were calming and reflective and were like, don't worry, everybody's done it, it's
yeah,
okay. And that's when I learned to set more alarms and get a better pill pot,
yeah,
so it's all a massive learning curve. I mean, they don't even let you out of the hospital until you can make sure you dose yourself right.
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
if you're, all the learning is there, the education is there, but that doesn't prepare you for the emotional side. And whatever that's going to look like for anyone going through any type of trauma, it's all right. You know, there's someone there that can be an ear for you.
Yeah, just to finish, really, what my nan used to say, and it's just reminded me actually, it's a problem shared is a problem halved.
So true.
I never got that as a kid, but I do understand it.
Get it now.
Yeah.
You get it now. Yeah, problem shared, problem half. I totally agree with that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. It's always a pleasure chatting with you.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks ever so much. I'll see you soon.
That's all right. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.